The accusation hung in the air like frost, turning the warm glow of Christmas dinner into something cold and brittle. My mother-in-law, Patricia Bennett, had just called me a gold digger in front of 20 family members, complete with a manila envelope containing post-nuptial agreement papers. I'm Emma Chen, but the Bennetts prefer to call me that investor girl when they think I can't hear them. At 34, I've spent the last decade building one of Boston's most successful real estate investment firms, specializing in luxury retirement communities. Not that my in-laws know this. They think I'm just a mid-level property manager who somehow trapped their precious son Thomas into marriage. The irony of being called a gold digger while secretly owning the very building we were sitting in was almost enough to make me laugh. Almost. We're just trying to protect the family's interests, Patricia continued, sliding the envelope across the table. Surely you understand, dear. I looked at my husband Thomas, seeing the conflict in his eyes. He'd been caught between my world and his family's expectations since we met 3 years ago. As a pediatric surgeon, he understood hard work and dedication. But he'd also been raised in the suffocating embrace of old Boston money, where appearance meant everything and family loyalty was a gilded cage. Mother, Thomas started, but his father, Richard Bennett, cut him off. Son, we're not blind. She's from a different background, no family connections, no trust fund, just this mysterious job she's so vague about. And now suddenly she's married to one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. The way he said different background made it clear what he really meant. To the Bennetts, my Chinese-American heritage was just another strike against me, along with my public school education and self-made career. I picked up the post-nuptial agreement, skimming its contents while the family watched with barely concealed anticipation. The terms were exactly what I'd expect from people like the Bennetts, designed to ensure I'd walk away with nothing if Thomas and I ever divorced. This is unnecessary, Thomas said firmly. Emma and I have our own arrangement. We did, though not the one his family imagined. When we married, we kept our finances separate by mutual choice. Thomas didn't know the full extent of my wealth any more than his family did. It was better that way, or so I thought. Patricia smiled tightly. Darling, you're too trusting. We've seen her type before. Remember Cousin William's wife? She nearly ruined him in a divorce. Ah yes, Cousin William. Currently living in one of my company's developments, though he didn't know I was his landlord. The Bennetts had a talent for rewriting history. William's wife hadn't ruined him, his gambling addiction had. I'd given him a discounted rate on the condo out of respect for Thomas. Not that anyone at this table knew that. I think, I said carefully, there are some misconceptions here that need to be addressed. The only misconception, Richard interrupted, was thinking you fit into this family. Do you have any idea who the Bennetts are in Boston society? I did actually. I also knew exactly how much of their supposed wealth was smoke and mirrors. My firm had analyzed their family holdings during a potential acquisition last year. The Bennetts were land-rich but cash-poor, living on old money that was rapidly running out. The Christmas tree lights twinkled mockingly as I considered my options. I could sign their post-nup, maintaining the peace and my cover. Or I could finally show them exactly who they were dealing with. A message lit up my phone, an alert from my company's automated system. Someone had just made an offer on Sunset Grove, the luxury retirement community where we were having Christmas dinner. The same property the Bennetts had been trying to buy for the past year, not knowing it was already owned by my holding company. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of timing. Before I sign anything, I said, standing up slowly, I'd like to show you something. I pulled out my laptop, ignoring Patricia's disapproving look. The Bennetts considered technology at the dinner table a breach of etiquette, but I was past caring about their rules. What could possibly be so important? Patricia started, but her words died as I turned the screen toward them. On display was my company's portfolio dashboard showing ownership details of Sunset Grove along with 30 other luxury properties across New England. At the top of the screen, in clear corporate letterhead, Golden Crown Investments, CEO, Emma Chen. The silence was deafening. This is some kind of joke, Richard finally managed. You're a property manager. Actually, I replied, pulling up another document. I'm the owner and CEO of the company that manages your entire retirement community, among others. Thomas was staring at me, his expression a mix of surprise and something else. pride? Understanding? We'd have to talk later, but right now I was focused on his parents. In fact, I continued, I believe you've been trying to acquire this property for the Bennett Family Trust. The offer that just came in, I checked my phone again, allowing myself a small smile, is about $20 million below market value. I'll have to decline. Patricia's face had gone from superiority to shock to a kind of desperate anger. You've been lying to us all this time. No, I corrected her. I told you I worked in property management and investments. You chose to assume what that meant. Just like you chose to assume I married Thomas for money without bothering to learn anything about me. Richard was already pulling out his phone, probably to verify my claims. This is impossible. The Chen Group is one of the largest property investment firms in New England. They own half the luxury communities in Boston. The Chen Group, I said quietly, is my company's parent corporation. Founded by my father, now run by me. He taught me everything I know about real estate before he passed away 5 years ago. More silence. Thomas reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. We talked about my career, of course, but I'd never told him the full scope of my business. Now he was learning it along with his family. Why didn't you tell us? He asked softly. Because I wanted to be accepted for who I am, not what I own. I met Patricia's eyes across the table. Some people think that's important. The irony of the situation was clearly dawning on the family. They'd spent 3 years looking down on me, assuming I was after their money, when in reality, the Bennett Trust portfolio, Richard said suddenly, his face pale. Our properties are mostly managed by subsidiary companies of my corporation, yes. I closed my laptop gently, including this building. I've kept the rates well below market value out of respect for Thomas. You're welcome, by the way. Patricia's hands were shaking as she reached for the postnuptial agreement. I stopped her. Keep it, I said. Consider it a Christmas present, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. The rest of dinner was a study in uncomfortable silence, broken only by the occasional clinking of silverware and muttered requests to pass the salt. The Bennetts were processing not only the revelation of my true position, but also the realization that they'd spent years condescending to someone who essentially controlled their financial future. As we prepared to leave, Thomas pulled me aside in the hallway. Why didn't you tell me the full extent of your business? I looked up at him, seeing not judgment but genuine curiosity. Would it have changed anything? He thought for a moment, then smiled. Only that I would have started bragging about my brilliant wife a lot sooner. But our moment was interrupted by Richard, who had followed us into the hallway. His face was a mask of carefully controlled emotion. We should talk, he said, about the Bennett properties. I checked my watch, noting it was nearly midnight. Yes, we should. But not tonight. My office next week. We can discuss everything then. As we drove home through the snowy Boston streets, Thomas was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. You know they're going to be impossible to deal with now. They'll swing from hostility to trying to use your position to their advantage. I smiled, thinking about the documents waiting in my office safe. Actually, I think it's time for some changes in how the Bennett properties are managed, starting with a complete audit. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong. It's showing them exactly how wrong they've been all along. The week between Christmas and New Year's was interesting, to say the least. The Bennett's reaction to my revelation cycled through predictable stages: denial, anger, bargaining, and finally, a desperate attempt to turn the situation to their advantage. First came the calls from family members who hadn't been at Christmas dinner. Cousin William was particularly anxious, proudly worried about his discounted condo arrangement. Aunt Margaret wanted to discuss investment opportunities. Uncle James suddenly remembered that his daughter was very interested in real estate and would love an internship. Then came the gifts. Patricia sent an enormous flower arrangement to my office with a card reading, "To our dear daughter-in-law, with love." Richard had his secretary deliver an expensive bottle of wine and a handwritten note about building bridges. I donated the flowers to a local hospital and gave the wine to my staff. Thomas found it all darkly amusing. They're trying so hard to pretend the last 3 years never happened, he observed one evening. Mother actually asked me if you prefer to host New Year's Eve at one of your lovely properties. But I had other plans for the new year. The audit I'd ordered of the Bennett properties was revealing some interesting patterns. Years of preferential treatment, unofficial agreements, and financial arrangements that wouldn't stand up to serious scrutiny. When Richard arrived at my office for our scheduled meeting, he was in for several surprises. First was the office itself, not the modest property management space he'd imagined, but the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise with views of Boston Harbor. Impressive, he said, trying to maintain his usual air of superiority despite being clearly intimidated. Very modern. Thank you, I replied, gesturing him to a seat. Let's discuss the Bennett properties. I laid out the audit findings methodically, the sweetheart deals for family members, the tax arrangements that skirted the edge of legality, the maintenance issues that have been ignored in properties occupied by non-family tenants. This is how business is done, Richard protested. Families take care of their own. No, I corrected him, this is how the Bennetts do business. And it stops now. I presented him with a new management contract. Standard rates for all tenants, regardless of family connection. Required maintenance schedules. Proper accounting practices. This will bankrupt some of the family members, he argued. William can't afford market rate. Margaret's daughter just got divorced. I'm aware, I said. That's why I'm offering a transition period. 6 months to get their affairs in order. Those who need help can apply for official hardship considerations, based on documented need, not family ties. Richard's face reddened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Getting revenge for how we treated you. This isn't about revenge, I told him honestly. It's about running a professional business. The Bennetts aren't the only families who depend on these properties. We have hundreds of residents who deserve fair treatment. We're your family now, he tried. No, I said firmly. You're my tenants and business associates. You made that very clear for 3 years. He left with the new contracts, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Thomas called me later to report that his parents were hosting an emergency family meeting to discuss the situation. They're trying to find leverage, he told me, some way to fight this. They won't find any, I assured him. Everything is completely legal and above board. More legal than what they've been doing, actually. The family meeting must have been interesting. The next morning, I received an email from Patricia requesting a private lunch to clear the air. I accepted, choosing a small French restaurant I owned, another fact the Bennetts didn't know. Patricia arrived perfectly coiffed and clearly rehearsed. Emma dear, she began after ordering a salad. I want to apologize for any misunderstandings. No misunderstandings, I replied, sipping my water. You were very clear about what you thought of me. For 3 years. We were protecting our family, she insisted. Surely as a businesswoman, you understand the need for caution. Caution is running background checks and credit reports. What you did was prejudice and discrimination. She flinched at the words. That's rather harsh. Is it? You called me a gold digger at Christmas dinner, in front of the whole family, while sitting in a building I own. Patricia had the grace to look embarrassed. We didn't know. You didn't try to know, I corrected her. You saw what you expected to see, a young Asian American woman who couldn't possibly be successful on her own, who must be after your family's money. And now, she asked quietly, what do you expect from us? I studied her carefully. Despite everything, she was still my husband's mother, still potentially my future children's grandmother. Professional courtesy, I said finally, respect for proper business practices, and perhaps, if you can manage it, an honest attempt to know who I really am, not who you assumed I was. The changes rolled out over the next 6 months. Some family members adapted better than others. Cousin William actually thanked me. The structured hardship program helped him finally address his gambling addiction. Aunt Margaret's daughter found a job and started paying her own way. Richard and Patricia struggled the most with the new dynamics. They weren't used to being in the less powerful position in family relationships, but slowly they began to adjust. The real breakthrough came unexpectedly. I was reviewing plans for a new development when my assistant announced that Patricia was here to see me. She looked different, less polished, more human somehow. I've been thinking, she said without preamble, about what you said, about not knowing who you really are. She pulled out an old photo album. This is our family history. The real one, not the version we show at parties. My grandmother started buying properties during the Depression, when no one thought a woman could run a business. I understood the olive branch she was offering. Would you like to hear about my father? How he taught me the business. For the next 2 hours, we talked, really talked, about family, ambition, and the weight of expectations. She showed me pictures of Thomas as a child, told me stories about his dream of becoming a doctor despite the family's push toward law or finance. You know, she said as she was leaving, you remind me a bit of my grandmother. She didn't let anyone tell her what she could or couldn't do either. Coming from Patricia Bennett, it was high praise indeed. Last week, we hosted a family dinner, not at Sunset Grove, but at our home. I cooked, using recipes my father had taught me. The Bennetts seemed surprised that a CEO knew her way around a kitchen. There's a lot you don't know about me, I told them, but I'm willing to teach you, if you're willing to learn. Thomas squeezed my hand under the table. We'd recently learned I was pregnant, news we were waiting to share until we were sure the family could handle it gracefully. As I watched the Bennetts actually trying to understand my culture through the food I prepared, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's giving people the chance to be better than they were, while never forgetting to value who you are. The post-nuptial agreement still sits in my office drawer, unsigned. I keep it as a reminder that true worth isn't about what you own or who you marry. It's about staying true to yourself, even when others doubt you. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's about letting people surprise you with their capacity to change.